Hey everyone, welcome back to a truly exciting episode of SAFT Podcast. Not only is this going to be the final episode of this year and this season, as you can see, this is our first ever live video episode. And so stick around for the rest of the podcast. Hey Steven, this is just amazing that we are able to finally do this.
Yeah, it's truly insane. Like the last video thing that we have had together is like never. We haven't had anything
Yeah, nothing in person,
in
just all
person.
remote.
Yeah,
virtual.
yeah. This is insane. This is really surreal. But I feel like these kinds of like in-person podcasts might be a lot better because
Yeah.
we can really riff off of each other. Like Zoom, there's a lot of like what is it? A lot of
All the network lag and all of that.
network
stuff. Yeah.
lag. Yeah, we won't be able to read each other's hand motions, emotions,
Yeah.
whatnot. We can look deeply into each other's eyes.
And
Yeah.
make the entire podcast weird for the audience as well.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we have done this sort of live podcast dialogue, but that was back in Calcutta when me and Piyush were together.
Right, but
and that was
those were
audio.
like- yeah, that was audio only.
Yeah.
right? So,
So-
this is the first time we're actually having the video style of the podcast as well.
Yes.
So that's really cool. That's really cool. Yeah.
And so, like I mentioned, this is going to be like the final episode of this season and this year. So we have been working on our conference, and so we're super excited to bring the news out to
Yeah.
you. We can't give away too much information right now, but I will just give you a hint. Areopagus 2022 won't be organized solo by SAFT. We are having an amazing ministry partner joining us to co-host conference. So we're super thrilled. We have an amazing lineup of guest speakers lining up. So we're super excited to bring the news out to you. So stay connected to us on social media platforms. And Steven, so in the past episode, let's get right into it.
Yeah.
In the past episodes, we've been looking at inductive arguments, the nature of inductive arguments, the nature of deductive arguments.
Okay.
We've also looked at the effectiveness of arguments,
Right.
knowing Christianity to be true and showing Christianity to be true. And also like very, I hope that they were very helpful for our audience. And so in this episode, I just want to touch upon one bit about the nature of arguments.
Okay.
So for deductive arguments, we have the premises. Kalam, we have,
Right.
everything that exists, that begins to exist has a cause.
Yes.
Universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I realized when I was learning about these arguments is that for us to affirm that premise one is true, we need not go to extreme absolute certainty levels of affirmation. We just have to show that that premise is true. It is more plausible that premise is true than the premise negation be true. So, in
Oh.
other words, saying the
Occam's
universe.
razor. Isn't that what? it's
Yeah,
called?
it would be sort of getting into Occam's razor, but not exactly in its own nature.
Wait, we have to just clarify for the audience what
Occam's
Occam razor means.
So it's sort of like a simplicity. So I will just try and break down it. You can correct me if I got it
Yeah, yeah.
broken down simply. So it is sort of like a philosophical rule of thumb. See how complicated are you making the whole proposition out to be. So the simpler the explanation is, that would be preferred more.
Exactly.
Because it sort of touches into ad hocness that we looked before when we see, how much assumptions are you adding into the theory sort of level.
Right.
So Occam's razor is like how finely balanced can you keep it without making it more complex. And therefore the simpler theory is preferred. But
Yeah.
it won't touch into that here.
Yeah.
So what I'm talking about is that when we say the universe began to exist, okay, what is more plausible? Universe began to exist or the universe did not begin to exist?
Right.
So in that statement, we would say, well, it is more plausible that the universe began to exist. We have scientific data pointing towards it. We have philosophical data pointing towards it.
Right.
And so in argumentation, what philosophers point out is that is sort of the threshold. That is what you need to get across to hold on to the statement that the universe began to exist.
Okay.
What are your thoughts on that?
A question is, who is saying that the universe did not exist?
Well, there is, it's not fringe, but there is sort of this outlying voice sort of in scientific arena who would hold on to the cyclical models of the universe.
Right.
the
But
way
that wouldn't be the universe did not exist, but has always existed.
it would be it would be more or less that the universe did not begin to exist. So, or if we say in the statement that I'm just using the example, the universe exists and the universe does not exist. We are looking at what is more plausible, right? And what stood out to me is that when we think about the things that we normally believe in, we are not always looking at absolute certainty. For example, hey, I exist
Right.
or you exist. Can you prove to me that you truly exist? Can I prove to myself that I truly exist?
Ooh.
What is the proof that we use? Like,
This can keep philosophers up for ages.
this has kept philosophers up for ages. So I was in a talk with a friend of mine, and you've also been engaged in campus evangelism for a lot of time. And he was asking about, okay, give me like absolute proof for existence of God. And so at that point I asked him, well, there are a lot of things that we believe because it is reasonable, it's
Right.
sensible to believe in that,
Right.
than it's falsehood. So for the statement to say that, I believe that I exist, even though we may not have absolute proof in it, it is much sensible to believe that I exist and to believe that I don't exist.
Yeah.
Because to believe I don't exist, I have to presuppose that I believe that I exist.
Yeah.
So it gets so convoluted. What is your thought on that? How did you come across this sort of realization about absolute certainty of something, practical certainty of something, sort of thing?
Yeah, like when it comes to the particular phrase that you're saying, it's so easy to break it down.
Yeah.
The problem is that when it comes to, so like you said, campus evangelism and all of that, what they try to do is they try to push it away to something so big, and they're clumping it together with different arguments here and there, and essentially creating such a complex level argument that they themselves do not understand. So at that point, what we do is what you said, we reduce it down to its most simplest form, and then what we ask is, if they're asking for the existence of God, then we say this, right? Usually when it comes to atheism and when it comes to these particular arguments that they're making, they're using these arguments from a particular culture that they have come from, right?
true.
And they are thinking with that particular mindset. And then reducing it to its most fundamental parts removes that entire bias from them. So what you mentioned about the particular, existence of God. So do I exist? That's a very good way of reducing it to the sum of its parts, essentially. So yeah.
And what that actually shows is that, let me ask you this. Do you believe that that man actually landed on the moon?
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
I
view-
would say yes.
Yeah, I also would say yes.
Yeah.
But none of us actually saw it with first-hand proof.
Right.
So that is a question that sometimes atheist friends ask of us. And I can understand. We can understand why they ask of us. So they would ask for this, well, I need some distinct, clear proof that God exists.
Right.
But the thing is, when it comes to a lot of our normal day stuff, we actually go around believing all of this.
Right.
Because even if you look at the evidence for moon landing, there are definitely objections to it. There are a lot of objections to it.
Even the video evidence that we have can be chalked up to be a witness report.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. So exactly everything in its essence, any level of history is going to be a witness report.
Yeah.
Right.
And so in that same way, so when people look at the gospel, they'll be like, oh, how do we trust eyewitness records? But when it comes to other instances, when it comes to nationally sensational news of some crime,
right.
the eyewitness reports, we don't think twice. We get up on it, we rally it, we express our anger on social media, we believe the news outlets, it's all done. But when it comes to the question of God, suddenly all of these sort of criteria go out the window. So now you need absolute proof. So I believe that's pointing out to the person that the burden of proof is not as high as they suppose it to be.
Okay.
Or the reason that them demanding this level of burden of proof for God, an inferior level of burden of proof for everything else, sort of keeps open the sort of hypocrisy.
Maybe so we could argue that the higher level of pushback is because of that they don't believe in the same thing that we are. But one thing is, they would say that eyewitness are also challenged in court as well to be fake.
Yeah.
So what makes a witness report credible? Probably something that the atheist might want to ask.
Yeah, but that would be, that whatever eyewitness report has to be put under cross-examination, back and forth.
Right.
And we all consider the point. I mean, no one is telling, we look at the Gospels and we start off by saying, this is divinely inspired, therefore I believe everything that it says. You can look at it as historical documents to try and see, does it make historical sense? Does it have attributes of a historical
And
document?
essentially just parse it in the same way that you would parse any other historical document. And
sort
look
of
for its-
emphasize the same level of weightage and assessment that you would give to other historical documents. And we're coming to the same point.
Right.
That people would want to give a certain level of burden of proof when it comes to the question of theism, a certain level of burden of proof or criteria threshold to get past when it comes to other documents. And I believe that even when we present these arguments, and as you sit through the podcast and you listen through it, you need to realize the fact that when you present it or share it with your Christian friends, atheist friends, agnostic friends, the reason that they may feel that it is not enough, it's the bar is too low, or the bar is or the arguments are not convincing, could be something within on the inside, some sort of dual standard. They may not want to admit it, but it could be the fact. We may also undergo these sort of bias in our judgments. So, and it would be a place for you to be patient with them, and sit through and walk through and show them why they are taking these sort of dual standards when it comes to this. Because often we may get up in the heat of the argument, and we just want to be like, hey, how can you not believe it? It takes compassion to think through why that person is thinking through. Because at the end of the day, it's not about winning people into a church or blowing up the proportions. Fine for that person to eventually come to love God.
Right.
Love has to come into the picture for that person to finally come into that sense. So
Right.
we have to be compassionate in that
So
regard.
that would come outside of apologetics, outside
Yeah,
of
definitely. Because
particular.
apologetics is generally pre-evangelism.
Yeah.
You're laying the field out, you're sort of clearing the obstacles so that the gospel can be heard in all
Right.
clarity.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I mean, that is the end goal. That's what we all want to go towards, with not just to dialogue or get into arguments and stuff. So, but eventually, that when we share the gospel with them, they'll be able to see it clearly, see it as much as possible without bias, and also keep the objections out. Yeah. So as I was saying before the camera got cut off, apologetics is pre-evangelism. So the end goal is that we can clear the objections and present to them the gospel in all its clarity and glory. And we're coming towards the close of the podcast. And
Yeah.
one final topic that I just want to touch up with you is, even after we present all of these arguments, to a lot of people, it is still unconvincing. Okay? Have you had any sort of personal experience where you present maybe one argument that you have presented and people are like, yeah, but still, it doesn't convince me, sort of a thing?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, like almost everything, like when it comes to, talking to people who are naturally skeptic,
Yeah.
they would, there are people who would open it with, would take it with open arms, like they would consider your argument. But some people, because they're just so entrenched, like how you said, that they're just so entrenched in their own way of thinking that for them it's hard. It's not that they're being blatantly ignorant. It's just that they cannot turn from their biases.
Right. Yeah.
Right? From their way of thinking in that sense. So they can't see it in your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something, generally speaking, it's not something that is restricted just to the dialogue of atheism versus theism. When it comes to doctrinal issues,
Yeah.
we Christians also
Yeah,
would
true.
feel the same thing.
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
takes that sort of direct, personal, sincere effort to say, okay, do I really want to hold on to believing this? It's that personal question that we ask ourselves that would bring about the change.
Right. And also, I think, like we mentioned before, reducing it to its most fundamental parts, that's what I think it'll remove that. Because if we keep it at that particular high level, they're only going to be able to think with their own perspective, because we are on this part of the lane and I am on this part of the lane. But once we're reducing it down to its fundamentals, we're actually bringing it back to the same lane, essentially. We're actually reducing it completely. So instead of saying, God, right? When you say the term God, that guy might be perceiving it differently because he's
Has some
he's
preconceived
seen-
notions about
exactly
who
he's
God is.
he's known God as something else. So probably he might be
A
thinking,
bearded guy sitting in heaven, commanding everyone, do this, do that.
yeah,
or
throwing lightning from heaven
Yeah.
at people who don't. So we reduce it to the topic that we are talking about. God is a personal being that has an agent that has created the universe.
And
Think of it like that.
If you recall, on the final day of Areopagus 2021, Dr. Craig's session,
Right.
he was talking about if someone challenges you with your belief in theism, belief in God, he said, okay, here are the 5 arguments that you can lay out.
Right.
He said in this way, the beginning of the universe is best explained by a cause of the universe. The design in the universe is best explained by a creator. So you can eventually, this will all lead to God, but he didn't throw in the word God every time.
Right.
So that was an interesting way to show that, when you say a designer, that suddenly fit in with what we see around us. We see the concept of design and a designer behind it.
Right.
And like you said, we sort of bring it to the level of what argument we're talking about, sort of bringing in the preconceived notions and, sort of instigating that person to bring in their preconceived notions when we talk about God, especially when you talk on topics like judgment or anything.
Right.
Suddenly they will have their ideas about God being ruthless and commanding
Yeah.
nativity, and that's all they see. Not the nature of God's justice, or not
Right.
even the nature of God's love or what the cross will bring forth. It will be just
right.
nativity stuff.
Yeah, and even when they're reading the Bible, they're using that bias that they've already gotten, the preconceived notion, like you
Yeah.
mentioned. Yeah, so that's a very interesting.
I think that's the role where we come into play, because we are not just basically seeing a person who's interested to know about God. We just give the Bible and say, yeah, now it's up to you. You carry on. We have to be there to help that person walk through.
right.
Enable that person to see the truth. So we're not asking to dilute the truth at any means. We're
Right.
trying to make it simplified so that they can grasp it at the concepts with the least amount of bias that they may bring into the scene. That's
Right.
what we are both pointing out here. We're not definitely not talking about diluting and bringing it, simplifying it, and all of that stuff.
Right.
But obviously there are topics that you can't dilute much. One would be Trinity. People have
True.
tried to explain Trinity with the water example.
Right.
Solid, liquid, gaseous state. The crazy thing is that actually fits well with modalism, which talks about God as a one being and one person taking
Right.
different
At a
forms,
particular point, yeah.
taking different forms more than with Trinity. So there is also a caveat there with trying to simplify it too much.
Yeah, but you remember the thing that I use, my particular.
yes.
So that is, but even then, that's a little bit. You would have to know a little bit more about maybe 3D. So essentially, what you're talking about God to be is essentially the concept 3D, 3 dimensions. So we have each dimension, the x coordinate, the y coordinate, and the z coordinate. So each of these are equally important to each other, right? If you remove the x coordinate, it becomes 2D. It's no longer 3D,
Yeah.
right? And they're equal to each other.
Like
Right.
people ask the question: if you remove God, is God still divine?
If
And
you,
all of
yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly.
If you remove, it's no longer 3D.
Yeah,
The concept is no
exactly.
longer
And people
3D.
consider Holy Spirit to be less divine than
Yeah.
than the Son and the Father and all of that stuff. So the only thing that maybe the 3D concept does not explain is the fact that that the Son is submissive to the Father and the Holy Spirit is submissive to the Son and the Father. That's the only thing that it doesn't explain, but it explains the other concepts in a much more better way. So there are ways to simplify it, but I think like how you said, we're not diluting the concept.
Yeah.
And I think when we're saying that, we mean it in the sense that like how Richard Feynman,
Yeah.
scientist Richard Feynman, so he talks about learning a concept, a complex concept like in physics or chemistry or something, and being able to, if you have truly learned it properly, you should be able to explain it to a 5-year-old or something
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So at least if I'm remembering it properly, I don't know whether I know. Okay, we're just going to assume that Richard Feynman has said that, okay? Because I don't know. From what I remember at least. So
Yeah, and one final note to close off with is that analogy of imagining God as a 3D concept to better portray the truth of Trinity, to better explain the complication of Trinity, would work well with a person who is well accustomed with the concept of Trinity.
right.
Just like as Nabil Qureshi was looking through his science book and he came across the example of how I'm trying to recall it off the top of my mind, how nitrogen particles or atoms interact, and that suddenly hit him, and he was like, "Oh, this sort of looks sort of like how the Trinity is explained." To him, it made sense. For me, it took time to grasp it.
Right.
So the whole point again we're coming down to is that when we try and convey the doctrines of the Christian faith, the intricacies of the Christian faith, or in general theism, breaking it down into similar terms without diluting the truth, while keeping holding to the fact that the best analogy to the Trinity is the Trinity itself, sort of a thing. Trying to break it down so that you can present it best to the person and enable them to come into clear terms with it with the least amount of bias. And that's sort of the thing that we want to invite our audience to.
Right.
As we
Wait. I just thought of another thing. I was like thinking there is something else that is similar between the 3D model and the Trinity. That the X, Y, and Z coordinates are completely distinct from each other. Right? They're not merging into the same thing. They aren't similar. They are completely different entities to each other.
sort of like they're of the same nature
Yeah.
while distinct from each.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So that's something to think about. You can ping up Steven on social media if you want to know more about 3D concept. But yeah, I think this is a sort of a good place to wind up this episode of this season 3, as well as of this year. We will be back. We'll be taking a sabbatical as we focus more on the conference and with other forms of content. And we would like to request you to carry on joining and stick with us through the journey. Thanks for all the love and support that you have given and for sticking with us through the podcast. So until we meet again, it is a goodbye from Craft Podcast. Myself Jacob and
Stephen.
take care. God bless.